Okay, so welcome. We're going to go ahead and do this very first ISO that we did in our isometric drawing and our orthographic drawing, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. Okay, so hopefully you can see my print in the lower left-hand corner. You've got Fusion open. You probably have a new design open called Untitled. That's not good. If you need a new design, let's say you have your old drawing open, then you're going to want to go to a new design, which is up here in this little piece of paper. You're going to click that and go New Design. But the first thing you're going to want to do after you have an untitled design is save it. So you can click this little Save button right here, making sure it's in the folder that you want to save it in. And you're going to want to save it as isometric number 1. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to do this as a subtractive modeling method, meaning that we're going to start with a solid or a rectangular cube that's the overall size, and then we're going to cut or subtract the features, which would be this first little groove in the front, inclined groove, and then this chamfer or angled corner as our second subtractive method. All right, so we're going to start with a sketch, and we're going to pick the front plane on the XY plane as our drawing surface, and we're going to draw a rectangle. Make sure your first point of your rectangle always starts and locks to the origin, and then just drag up and out. Again, we don't know how big that rectangle is yet. That's why we're going to click on the dimension tool, and we're going to count and measure how tall should our front view rectangle be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. I could do 6 1/4-inch units, or I can keep things simple for our first Fusion experience and just say, we'll just put in the number 6, which in this case is going to be inches, and then I'm going to zoom out by clicking on this little button, or I could roll my middle mouse button in and out. That's another way to do it. That works as well. Going back to my sketch dimension, I'm going to click on this bottom part of my rectangle and click, and I'm going to count how wide it should be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. Type in the number 8, and now I have my overall front box, and I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm only going to finish it if I see that all of the geometry is black, meaning that it's constrained. It doesn't have any other information necessary. So I'm going to hit Finish Sketch, and then I'm going to extrude it. I can angle it if I'd like, so I can see it as I'm extruding. My depth, now I got to look again at the model. 1, 2, 3, 4 units deep. So I'm going to type in my distance right here as 4, and I'm going to make sure that since this is my first solid that I'm creating from my first sketch, I'm going to make sure it says New Body. And then put in my number and say OK. All right, now I'm going to start cutting away the features on the inside. It's a subtractive method. So I'm going to go ahead and create another sketch. You'll see those orange planes appear again, but now I have a body here that I can actually click on the surfaces of the body also. So I kind of want to click on this front plane because now I can create the shape of this front cutout that I can then extrude in and subtract. So I want to start by drawing an angled line. But before I draw this angled line, I want to caution you on a couple things. So I'm going to click on Line. Make sure when you click the top, first of all, there's going to be 2 clicks. Where does it start? Where does it end? Make sure that your starting point, you see that little X that appears? That makes sure that it snaps to the this little line up here. If I don't do that, watch. If I click up here, and then I click somewhere down here, and then I press Escape because I'm done, that's a problem because now that line is not locked to anything, is not locked to this line. So the endpoint is not defined as far as where it goes. So that's not good. So I'm going to click that line, and I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to select Delete. So instead, what I want to do is I want to click on Line, and I want to make sure that that little X appears. I want to click somewhere in this area, drag it down. Do not click where that little triangle appears, because then it's going to lock it to the midpoint. And if I do that, I won't be able to pull it off the midpoint. So make sure that little X appears. That means it's going to be locked to the edge, but not to the midpoint. And by doing that, now you'll see if I drag that line, it moves and slides. Okay, so I got to define the angle of this line, and I can do that by defining how far off the edge. Looks like 2 units. So I'm going to click dimension, click on the endpoint, and then the other endpoint, and then I'm going to say 2 units. And then down here, I can do the same thing, and I can count how many units off of this edge. Looks like 5, and then that's my angled line. Okay. Now sometimes, not always, sometimes, because when I finish the sketch, I'm going to want to take this little region right here, and I'm going to want to click extrude, and I'm going to pick this profile to cut. Okay. But notice how, I'm going to cancel that. Notice how when I hit extrude, it's asking me for a profile, and I'm picking this profile as what I want to cut. But sometimes Inventor doesn't see my profile, because sometimes, and I'm going to go back into my sketch, there it is, my sketch folder, and I'm going to double click on it. Sometimes you got to actually close in, and I didn't have to do it this time, but I'm just giving you this heads up that sometimes you do. You have to close in your profile, because sometimes Fusion has a hard time seeing what it is that you're trying to extrude. It doesn't see it as a closed two-dimensional sketch. So it looks like I didn't need to do that, but again, I did it anyway, snapping to the corners of the object, picking the profile. Now, excuse me. Now, right now, it wants to create a new body. I don't want to do that. I want to cut. And when I go to cut, if I click and hold and drag that arrow in the opposite direction, you'll notice it starts to remove material. And if I count, I want 2 units. So I'm going to go -2. And then if I hit OK, I've just cut out that inclined surface 2 units back. Okay, last thing to do here before I'm done is to cut this little chamfer, it's called. It's an angled corner, a flat angled corner. So I'm going to click Create a Sketch. I can do this from the back side, or it's convenient just to click on this front surface right here. And I'm going to do the same thing I just did with this front one. I'm going to grab a line and just snap it to this edge, and not to the midpoint, but somewhere up here so I can still dimension it. And then I'm going to click my dimension tool and look at my drawing and say, okay, I'm 2 units off the top, and then looks like 3 units down off the bottom, or top down, so there's 3. I'm going to not close this corner in and see if it still extrudes. Looks like it does. That's a benefit to Fusion. Inventor used to give us a lot of problems with that. Looks like this is definitely an improvement. I'm going to hit OK, and now I have my finished product. So when I am done, what I want to do is I want to turn this into a component. Right now it's just a body. So I'm going to right click on body, and I'm going to say create component, and now we have a component. Probably a good idea to also rename your component to isometric number 1. There you go. All right, hit save, and now you are done.